Hey there, my name's Jesse, and you're listening to the Deep Lore Boys podcast.
Please tell me that he was aware that there were people worshiping him.
He still loved the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Getting freaky in Ben Franklin's basement?
Not like that.
There's an old legend that exists in the Pittsburgh area of a man that walks around at night who doesn't have a face. Like, they would stop, they'd say hi to him, he'd look over, and he'd just be completely faceless.
Yeah.
Most people dismiss this as just an average myth. It was just sort of like your average cryptid legend, like, okay, it's a man with no face. It's not really realistic.
A lot of people were saying that he was like a ghost. It was like a ghost of somebody walking on the side of the road that they would see. It was just some like faceless creature. A lot of when he really became, I guess, active was in, I think, the 60s, right? It was like the 60s and 70s. Was
like
when
60s,
really
70s, up to like the 80s. So
about
anyway,
them.
we're getting ahead of the story here. It ended up being that this actually was, as terrifying as it would sound, this was a real person. And they did not have a face.
Yeah.
So this was a man named Raymond Robinson. As a child, he was 8 years old, and he climbed up a electrical line, a pole, and tried to get a bird's nest. I guess he tried to touch it. And it ended up being that there was an abandoned trolley line, and he touched the electrical lines. So all of those voltages, like all that voltage, went straight through him and ended up shooting out his face, and it cost him his vision, and he lost his nose.
He defied doctors' expectations, severely disfigured. He had lost his eyes, nose, and his right arm, too. That's worth noting.
Dude, that's terrible.
It's a horrible thing to happen. This is not the wholesome part of the story.
Yeah, this is the non-wholesome part.
So after that point, I mean, he didn't really go to school a whole lot. So he lived in his room at his family house. He had a room with a bathroom attached, and he just basically stayed in there for his entire childhood life. He ended up becoming a really big fan of baseball and the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Wait, really? Even though he couldn't watch the games?
He listened to it on
radio.
radio.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So because he was stuck in his room all day, that was his thing. And even before he had his accident, he still was a big fan of baseball.
He also made doormats, wallets, and belts. I don't know. Do we know if he was completely blind or if he
had no
was
eyes.
just mostly...
So he's
No, he was definitely blind.
He was totally blind. And if you have
Okay.
no eyes, like you're not detecting any shadows or light or dark, there's nothing.
Can I also just talk about the fact that like he had a room with its own bathroom attached, and this was like the 1920s. Like the Buffalo area, good luck finding that. You get like a
I'm sure he gave that to him. Like, dude, he deserves the best, man.
Oh,
like,
he totally does. But I'm just
Pennsylvania.
gonna say here, like, it's good that he grew up in this area, because the Buffalo area, you get like a 5-6 bedroom house, and there's like one bathroom, and then they're like, well, there's a second bathroom, but it doesn't have a shower.
If you ever put in a bathroom before, it's a lot. I think the absolutely like my favorite thing with the story, and kind of stands out, is I guess he just didn't give up. He kept going, and you can see he spent his days hanging out with his relatives, making doormats, wallets, and belts, and he sold them to make money. He wouldn't go out during the day because he didn't want to scare people, so he would only go out at night.
So he would take walks at night. He would take long walks on a quiet stretch of State Route 351. So normally there weren't a lot of cars on that road. That's why he would walk there with his walking stick. But every now and then somebody would come by and they would get home with a very spooky story.
And I can totally see how if you're just driving by on the highway late at night back in like the 50s and 60s, and you pass by a guy with no face walking with a cane, like, I mean, that's enough. I can totally understand how that's going to spook you out a little bit, and you're going to think, oh, was that a ghost? What was that? Like, I can see that.
So after the legend kind of started to circulate, groups of locals regularly would gather together to search for him. And now he was a ghost story at this point. Like, nobody really knew
yes,
it was
he was difficult to find at some points in times. And unfortunately, not everybody was very nice to him. He actually recalled that a couple different times he was actually beaten up. They put him in the trunk of a car, and then they drive him off and then dump him on another roadside.
Yeah, dude, that made me.
Yeah,
someone put him in their trunk and they dropped him off somewhere because he was blind. He couldn't find his way home. I was like, that. Like, do you know how actually evil that is?
That
I'm like,
is
who
cruel.
like that? I don't know. That's diabolically evil.
That's
like, I remember
horrid. Yeah.
Yeah, so most people are like, okay, this guy was just like a recluse. He never really left his house except for at night. He never knew anybody. He didn't have relationships or hobbies. He just sort of like lived this life. And that's not actually the case. What actually happened was he met several people. He would actually offer to get in people's cars if they gave him a beer. He was a big fan of beer. And even into his adult life, he still loved the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Oh
He still
man.
listened to them on the radio. He was still a diehard fan. And people who met him actually said that he didn't act like his life was super unfair. Like he was really chill and laid back and was just like, he didn't ask constantly, like, why was it me that had this happen? Like,
Yeah. People that found him would often exchange a short conversation with him, get a photo, and give him a beer or cigarettes. So,
there was a story that I was reading. I forget which article it was. So I do encourage people to find the story. But it was of someone's dad who grew up in the Pittsburgh area and they heard rumors about him. And then this like the teacher that they knew or someone was like, yeah, I actually have met Raymond Robinson before. I can take you guys to meet him. But here's the one thing: you guys have to be quiet when he gets in the car. Like you can't like yell or do anything like that though. And the one teenager who was like 16 at the time was like, yeah, I'm a man. I won't be scared at all. So they went there in the middle of the night. They drove on the side of the road. They had a beer, and he got in the car, looked back at all of them because he could still hear them, and it was apparently like 2 feet away from the one teenager's face, and he just screamed, like could not like contain it.
oh,
And they said that instead of like Raymond being scared, he was just like, okay, I'm used to it.
It's
Like
just
he could care less. But like the teenager was like,
oh my gosh.
it's kind of sad to me because like I feel like at that point he was probably just used to it because it sounds like people had that reaction a lot of times, but it wasn't until people started to really notice like, oh no, this is just a guy, he's just here, and they were like, oh, and it became kind of a thing where like if you passed by him, instead of speeding along and driving away and being all scared, people would just stop by and talk with him and give him a beer or
Yeah.
something. And like that's just such a better way to live. And I mean, we know obviously a lot of people did not treat him right, and I'm sure that he got plenty of people screaming and running the other way, even after he had gotten to know people.
But they
Well,
said that in that car ride, the 16-year-old was initially scared, but then eventually he just started asking questions and just talked to him, and they said like really he was just a normal guy.
spooky, but in like the best possible way. Like this is a story where instead of starting out normal and then getting spooky, it starts out spooky and then winds up having just such a wholesome kind of finale that like it's
yeah. Like all good stories, this one also comes to an end. Not a tragic end. Even, despite the cruelty of some people, Robinson did not stop his nightly walks. He kept doing it. He retired to Beaver County Geriatric Center, and he died in 1985 at the age of 74. So despite
wow, he
everything
actually
that happened to him in life, he lived to be, I
yeah,
mean, 74 is a
he
decent
lived.
age.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically the average American guy's life expectancy. So
I mean, in 85, that was probably above the life expectancy
yeah, I
for
mean, he
an
lived a
American
full
guy.
life, dude.
And I will say, I really do appreciate the fact that even after he had some really bad experiences, he still kept going on nightly walks and still just liked the fresh air and just being
That's
out.
what I'm saying. He just did what he wanted to do. Like he didn't let literally anything stop him.
Filmmaker Tisha York planned to direct and publish a film based on the Green Man urban legend. She was going to complete it in 2009, but the Great Recession happened, and she still holds the right to the story. It says it's based on the Green Man urban legend. I don't know if that means it's going to be a spooky story that does not honor Raymond Robinson, or if it's going to be like a documentary. I don't.
If they make like some slasher film or something and they go all out, that is a movie that if I went to the theaters for that, like I would just storm out and I would like there is no way.
I'd pull a Joker 2.
Hey there, hope you're enjoying the lore so far. Thanks for listening to the Deep Lore Boys podcast. We've had a huge surge of activity on social media lately. We've got a bunch of new subscribers, so if you're one of them, might I recommend episode 11 of season 2. It's our Killdozer episode. Basically, a guy got really, really mad at the town he lived in, built a giant reinforced bulldozer tank, and leveled the city. It was a wild story. We spent a whole episode on it. I really enjoyed it. Maybe you will too. But for now, thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Lore Boys podcast.
Do you want to talk about the skeletons in Ben Franklin's basement for a second?
Let's do that. I want to know about that. Can
what?
you
So
talk about that?
So for years, people were going to Benjamin Franklin's house, and it was a historical site. People were going there. It was awesome. It was great, whatever. And then one day, conservationists were repairing the basement. They were just like fixing up some walls, and they were like, "Hey, there's a little bone down here." They noticed it just kind of like peeking out of the dirt in the bottom of the cellar, and so they were kind of like dug around a bit, and they retrieved over 1,200 bones.
Wait.
From at
Like
least
human
15
bones?
human bones. They were human bones. They belonged to at least 15 different people, some of which had been children, and they were all buried in a pit in his basement.
How you gonna explain this one, Ben?
Yeah, like Ben,
I don't think Ben is beating the allegations.
And it's like that's the kind of allegation like you're not getting around. So immediately they were like, okay, this is really bad. So they didn't know how old the bones were or what was going on. So they immediately were like, yeah, we need people in on this. They're like, somebody has been killing people and stashing them in Ben Franklin's basement. I'm telling you, this happened. And they dated them, and they're like, no, these bones are over 200 years old. these have been here. Ben Franklin was putting bodies in his basement.
So you're saying the immediate assumption they had was that somebody recently
that was
killing people and thought, you know where I can stash these bodies where nobody will find them? A historical
Well, that's genius.
house.
Okay, if you do that, then you can stash them down in there, and then people will be like, oh, maybe it's just they're historical, right? Like I can see the thought process, but
there's no way I would not be like, oh, I just killed all these people. I'm gonna bury them like under the Washington Monument.
Yeah, like it's a bad idea.
This is the American Rupkund. This is the American Lake of Bones.
Like, so Benjamin Franklin was burying bodies in his basement. And this caused
do we know it was him? Do we know it was him? I mean, before...
if it was his house, there's no way he would have known about this.
That was the immediate thing. They're like, well, it couldn't have been him. Maybe someone else was doing it. It was his house. It was him. And actually, we know why he was doing it. And he wasn't apparently... Thankfully, Benjamin Franklin never murdered anyone. That's something that's not on record. He was not killing people and doing it. Apparently, he had a friend. It says in this article, a young friend and protege named William Hewson, and he was doing the dirty work. But he wasn't going out and killing people. Basically, Hewson was studying as an anatomist, and at the time. At this kind of era, it wasn't until like the Victorian era that studies of human anatomy really became widespread and kind of took off. At this time, it was seen as a very like unnecessary and kind of foul thing, and so it was very frowned upon. For like, you didn't donate bodies to science; that wasn't an option. Right. Like that was seen as very bad. So they didn't really have any options, but he really wanted to study anatomy because they really felt like this was an important study.
They were ahead of their time. They were cooking. I mean,
this guy is like, hey, Ben, I want to study anatomy. I'm really interested in this. I think we can help people. I just need some dead bodies. And Benjamin Franklin was like, oh, I think I can help you. I got a basement.
I've got a basement.
And so they went to graveyards and they dug up graves. And then they filled them back in real quick. They just do that at night, and they'd take the bodies to the basement. And apparently, William Hewson and Ben Franklin, as well as a few other students that they'd bring in, would perform autopsies.
So they were legit grave robbers.
Yeah, they were grave robbing.
This is like Frankenstein.
They were taking the bodies, and then instead of trying to put them back in the grave, they didn't want to risk that, so they just dug a pit in the basement and they put them in there when they were done. And that was what they did. And apparently it was one of the first kind of schools of anatomy at the time. Like, people didn't really do that very much, at least in Western culture. People have been doing that for years in other places. But
wow,
a big deal for the early Americas. And so
that had to have stank really bad.
It had to have been a
I don't know,
smelly chamber.
He was cool with that. And they were just like, yeah, Ben, can we bury these dead bodies in your basement? And he's like, yeah, go for it. Like, that's like,
yeah, why not?
It's like,
oh, but this was not in like Philadelphia where he lived. This was in London. This was before the Declaration of Independence was signed. This was a long time before that.
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right.
Benjamin
I totally
Franklin's
missed
home
that.
In London. How did we miss that? This is in London.
I totally missed that. This is the England. So okay, in England you can do that. Yeah, that's fine. All of this
Yeah.
is fine, actually. Never mind.
In London, you can hide bodies underneath your house. Like, they do that all the time.
Yeah, basically, it was just known at the time from historical records that he had an anatomy school that he ran. And apparently, then the address turned up at 36 Craven Street, and they're like, wait a second, that belongs to Ben Franklin's house.
Hold on.
Yeah, like one of the skulls apparently has several drill holes in it, and many of the bones were sawn or like cut. It's unless they were like really just going freaky and like being diabolical.
Getting freaky in Ben Franklin's basement?
Not like that. No, wait.
Whoa,
That's probably the wrong use of words there for sure. But
So apparently they said that there is no evidence that Franklin performed any of the autopsies on these skeletons either. He said that it was likely that he was almost certainly aware, but it's not really likely that he was involved in any way.
hold up. Do you guys want to know Google AI's list for the scariest? No, not spookiest things ever. Google AI just
hit us. Yeah, what does Google AI say?
So 8 options. I'll start from the bottom and I'll work my way up to number 1. So number 8 on the list is some places. It's
wait, some places.
Some places. Yeah, it lists as examples. I think it's Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, Monte Cristo Homestead in Australia. Transylvania is listed as just some places. Above that, we have some historical events, including the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Great Clown Scare of 2016.
So, like, the Holocaust isn't in
that's
there,
not
but
mentioned.
the Great Clown Scare of 2016?
Clown Scare. Okay, then we take it up. Number 6, biological weapons. Easily.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Okay, number 5 is a specific place called Raynham Hall, which apparently is a haunted house. Number 4 is also a place called Greyfriars Kirkyard. Number 3 is crocodile, the drug. That's number 3 on scariest
The drug?
Spookiest thing ever, yeah, which fair enough. I mean, that's nasty stuff. Number 2 is the Gympie plant, which is a plant from Australia that can sting. It's like stinging nettle and it hurts really bad. That's number 2 on the list of spookiest things ever. And number 1 just says black hole. That's
I really feel like that is the scariest thing.
I mean, no, actually, I thought number 1 was going to be something really stupid, but
they made a second list of 8 things that humans specifically fear, because apparently this is what the AI is afraid of the most. The humans specifically fear, I'll just go from top to bottom, public speaking, heights, the dentist, snakes, flying, spiders and insects, enclosed spaces, and mice. That's the normal human things, but it's not telling me that. It's telling me its top 8 most scary things.
And Mothman wasn't on there. Neither were mummies.
Mothman doesn't even come up. So
can't believe Ben Franklin's basement wasn't on there.
Can't believe. Yeah. What, dude? It doesn't even know about him, man.
That's crazy. Well, thank you, Google AI. Now I'll know to never go to Australia.
Do not, because there could be a black hole, and that's pretty bad. So be careful.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Why is the AI afraid of biological weapons? That's like the only thing on Earth that's not affected by them. Like it's
right.
It's literally.
Well, even
fine.
The stinging metal plant wouldn't.
Yeah, there's nothing.
AI.
It can't be affected by crocodile either. Any sort of haunted house probably isn't going to have much bearing on the AI. Maybe a ghost could like haunt the Google headquarters.
What about the cargo cult? What is that?
Oh, have we not talked about cargo cults?
I think we did.
It's not spooky, but it is really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know what to call it. It's interesting, super interesting.
If we want to get into cargo cults, I'll just provide an example of the most notorious one that really interests me. Basically, what happened was World War II, okay?
World War II happened.
It was a real thing. It ruined the Pacific in plenty of ways. It caused a huge big stink. If you were to go there in like the 80s or 90s or whatever, if you were to go to this island, you would meet a whole bunch of islanders who were building all sorts of planes and satellite dishes and stuff out of wood and out of like sticks and stuff and grass.
What was happening on these islands is you'd have these tribes that are pretty much uncontacted. And then randomly for a couple years during World War II, the United States would go in there and build an airstrip and set up a whole military base, and there'd be planes landing there and helicopters would come with supplies. And then after that base's effectiveness was, it was no longer needed in the war, they'd just pack up and leave. Well, then the
Yeah.
Islanders are like, shoot,
They're
these
like,
guys were
"What?"
summoning like these
They're like,
giant things from
"What
the
just
sky that would bring
happened?"
food.
They're like,
What just happened?
Oh,
So they
yeah.
would start building their own airstrips, and they would even like walk around with sticks and wave them like they're waving airplanes in, trying to like resummon, lords of the sky to bring down food and supplies and stuff.
And apparently, the Americans that came to the island said that there would likely be more coming in the future. Japan is really gearing up, and it was basically them saying, like, just so that you guys are aware, stuff might go down, like it might
Yeah.
happen. And then lo and behold, in 1942, stuff went down, and they were like, whoa. And they like
Yeah.
totally, it was, I mean, a prophecy brought to light right then and there. And this, I mean, this even still persists in a lot of places today.
Mhm.
I mean, still with the John Frum cult, they still carry on to this day.
have they not really been like contacted since then?
I
I think they
so.
have, but I think that they've been doing it for so long now that they just kind of keep going with it. I mean, it's a whole religion where they're basically just worshiping the US military despite not at all ever having been to America or fought in the military or anything.
And honestly, like, I totally get it. It's not even
Yeah.
like, oh, haha, silly Islander doesn't know what a helicopter is. Like, yeah, of course
Like,
he doesn't know
it's
what a
like,
helicopter is.
yeah, like there's an idea. I've been taking an anthropology class, and I've been talking a lot about how actually stupid the idea of just like people with less technology than other people are inherently like weaker or
Dumber.
dumber. Like that's not, like, you are not dumb because you don't know something. And if you're from a society or a civilization that doesn't have access to that technology, it doesn't make you any dumber. Some of the smartest people have lived thousands of years ago. Like it has nothing to do with that. So
Yeah.
I hate that mindset. It drives me nuts.
So the John Frum movement was one of these cargo cults, and I think that we don't really know exactly how it began, but the idea is that an American World War II serviceman was like, yeah, I know the helicopter guys, I know the sky gods, like I'll give you wealth and prosperity if you worship me.
Well, it would have
And he
been
was
it would have been planes because they weren't helicopters in World War
or
II. But
yeah,
yeah,
planes.
just
I'm
planes,
sorry.
yeah.
He he probably said that he was like John from New York or something, but the Islanders just remember him as John Frum.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like that's like a lot of people say like John from America, John from somewhere, John from some regiment or something, but no one remembers. We just know that he's John from
John Frum.
John from. That's
He got
so,
these people to he lied to them and told them that he would, bring them wealth and prosperity, and then packed up and left with his other soldiers.
but I don't know how John Frum would have successfully communicated that without taking the time to like learn their language first, because I don't think they could understand English. I mean, I can see him just like rambling to them in English, and all they hear out of it is he's John Frum. That's like
Right, like
that's what he said. That's what he is.
that's
One of
it.
the sky gods just told us his name and a few other things that we couldn't understand. Like
It'd be really
that's
funny
enough.
if
I mean,
this was an actual, just an innocent guy named John who was not trying to communicate that,
yeah,
but
he was
like
he
that
was just trying to like
accidentally
he
got
was just trying to talk with them and be like, "Hey guys, what's up?
yeah.
I'm John. How you doing?" And
And
they're
they're
just
like, John Frum?
John. Whoa, it's him.
He, he's the king. Yeah.
Dude, something about this is like in a way almost funny, and then also like in a way just like super cool to me. I don't know. It puts everything into perspective for me. Like it really.
Yeah.
It makes me realize like there are people alive today who would see me with my modern technology as a literal deity, and like that doesn't really feel good to me. That's the thing. Like that's not something that I'm proud of at
Oh, I
all.
thought you were
feel
like, yes.
I'm like, yeah, I'm
I'm
him.
gonna start a
I'm him.
cult.
Like, we're
I'm
him,
Matthew
guys.
Frum. I'm John's descendant. So there's also the Prince Philip movement, which was similar to John Frum, only with a real identifiable human being. It was a religious sect followed by the Kestam people around the villages of Yahonanen. It's unclear just when the belief came about, but probably in the 50s or 60s. And it must have been from soldiers there, like British soldiers talking to the islanders about Prince Philip. So then the islanders are like, oh my gosh, I mean, if Prince Philip is the king of these guys and they're flying planes in, like, he's got to be big stuff. So then Prince Philip came and visited the island, I guess, and they went nuts. Which, and again, this is not
Dude.
to like insult anybody's intelligence. I would too.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
like that's crazy. I mean,
that's
that's insane, dude. Like, what are you even supposed to do at that point if you just hear, "Oh yeah, there's a whole island full of people and they worship you. Do
yeah.
you want to go pay them a visit, see what they do?" Like
Well,
of
that's the
course.
thing. Allegedly,
Like,
allegedly, when he was there, he didn't even know about the cult. Like it was brought to his attention years later.
what?
Like he didn't.
He did. Please tell me that like he was aware that there were people worshiping him, or like did he just spend his whole time on the island blissfully unaware? And then people were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, while you were there, people were really losing their
People were
minds."
hyped, dude. So after it was brought to Prince Philip's attention that he was being worshipped by these islanders, a guy suggested that Prince Philip send them a portrait of himself. So he did. He signed and sent an official
Oh,
photograph
dude,
to the
I
island.
got this photo.
So he sent him a
That-
selfie. They responded. So this was like the Shroud of Turin to them. The villagers responded by sending him a traditional pig killing club.
Yes.
And he sent another photo back posing with the club.
Dude.
So, I mean, that must have been cool.
That's so chill. All right. That's
That must have been
so
cool. They all, oh no, they mourned Prince Philip's death in 2021.
Oh yeah, I don't know how.
Oh man, I should have
Yeah, I
known
think
that
at
that
this
would
point
happen.
they're probably not like completely uncontacted. They probably caught up.
No,
No, it sounds like
yeah,
they've had
at this
plenty of
point,
contact. Yeah, it sounds like it's shifted more from like it's not. They don't think that he's a god anymore. They just think of Prince Philip as like a really, really cool guy, and everyone just
Yeah.
really, really likes him. And so apparently, when he died, it was devastating.
Brennan in the Discord chat just said, "I'm gonna go build a Red Lobster for them." That is such an
Dude,
ancient
that's
Deep
a
Lore
deep
Boys
cut right
reference.
there, yeah.
If you get that, you instant mod status. Hey again, it's Jesse. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Deep Lore Boys podcast. If you did, leave a like, leave a review, subscribe for more episodes, share it with a friend, you know the stuff. Thanks for listening, and I hope your day is nothing short of interesting. Take care.
I'm gonna go post that one on twitter.com.